AI never sleeps, and this week has been absolutely insane. We have an AI that can turn a photo into a super realistic 3D scene. We have another AI that can generate long videos with multiple consistent scenes. NVIDIA releases a new image model that can generate images in less than a second. We have another AI that's really good at editing images while keeping the original details of the image. We have yet another AI which can take any video and change the camera motion of that video. Google releases a new open source AI model and a super useful image editor. Plus we have some incredible humanoid robot demos and a lot more. So let's jump right in. First up, this AI is pretty incredible. It's called MIDI, which stands for Multi-Instance Diffusion for Single Image to 3D Scene Generation, and this can create a super accurate 3D scene from just a single image. In fact, what it does is it analyzes your image and segments each individual object from the image, and then for each object, it generates a 3D object from that and arranges them realistically like this. So here are a few examples. Let's say your input photo is like this. Well, this is the 3D model. Look how realistic everything is, including the plant and the dogs. And even if I scroll to the back, everything looks super realistic, even though this data is definitely not in the input photo. Super impressive. Here's another example. So let's say the input image is this. Well, here's the 3D model that we get. Again, everything is arranged very accurately and realistically, and everything looks great, including the books and the leaves of these plants. Here's another example. So if the input image is like this, here is our result. Even though this scene is quite busy, there are a lot of objects, but it's able to generate a very accurate 3D scene from this. Here's an even trickier example. So if we input this anime photo of a bedroom, here is our result. It looks pretty good for the most part, but there are a lot more artifacts in this example. So there's this beige patch here, which doesn't really exist in the input image. Plus, this scene is kind of missing the pictures on the wall, plus the curtains and the window. Another thing to note is that this is blazing fast. So here it says it can process an image and generate a 3D scene in as little as 40 seconds. Now, if you compare this new MIDI method with other competitors like SSR and Gen3D SR, it's not even close. So if you input this photo of a kitchen table, look how much more accurate MIDI's generation is. Or here's another really tricky scene of a kitchen, but note that MIDI is able to reconstruct this very accurately, whereas the other two competitors have a lot of flaws. Here is yet another example of these two patio chairs. The awesome thing is, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've already released the code. So if you click on this GitHub repo, it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. Anyways, I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further. Alright, next up, this AI is super useful. It's called tight inversion, and this can edit images while keeping the original details intact. So here are some examples of this in action. Note that these images were generated with Flux and Pulid, which is a face swapping tool that you can use with Flux. And then if this is your input image, and then you prompt it with a portrait of a clown, if you don't add this new tight inversion method, notice that it doesn't really retain the woman's face. This is a completely different face. However, once you add tight inversion, notice that it retains the woman's face in the photo. This looks exactly the same as the original woman. Or here's another example of Jan LeCun as the original image. If you prompt it with a bearded man wearing a hat, well, without this tight inversion method, note that it kind of changes his face quite a bit. It makes him smile, which we never prompted it to do. But with tight inversion, notice that it keeps all the facial details of the original image, and then it just adds a beard and a hat to it. Here's another example. So if this is your input image and you prompt it with portrait of a vampire, notice again that with this tight inversion method, the man's face looks almost exactly the same as the original image. So this is a really nice way to edit images of people without changing the original details. The nice thing is this is model agnostic. So instead of using Flux and Pulid, You can also use another image generator like SDXL with IP adapter, which is also used for face swapping. So here are a few examples. If this is your input image and you prompt it with a person with a thick beard, note that with this new method, it keeps the original pose and facial features of the man while adding a beard. Here's another example. If we have this input image and we prompt it with robots in a diner, without this new method, it just generates a completely different photo. But with this new method, it keeps this restaurant setting while adding a few robots in the scene. And really quickly, here's how it works. So normally when you modify an image using AI, you need to invert it or basically convert it into a special latent space and then reconstruct it back into an image. The problem is that the paths taken during inversion and reconstruction are often not aligned. So this leads to distortion and lower fidelity. There are a lot of details that do not look like the original image, but this new tight inversion method works by using the original image as a condition to guide the editing process. This makes the paths more aligned, like this, so the edited image is much better quality and keeps the details of the original image. Anyways, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've already released a Hugging Face demo for both Flux and SDXL. Let's check out this Flux one. So pretty straightforward to use. Here is where you would upload a reference image, and then here is where you would enter the prompt describing this original image, and then here is where you would enter a new prompt describing what you want to change in that image. And then here are some additional sliders which you can adjust to change the faithfulness of the edit. So for example, let's say we upload this photo of a man. For the source prompt, we can just put a person. And then for the edit prompt, if we put a person with a thick beard, here is our result. It's the same man with the same pose, but it adds a beard on his face. Very useful tool. Now, because they've released these Hugging Face spaces, that means it's already free and open source. You can easily clone and download a Hugging Face space to use locally on your computer. Anyways, the links are all up here. I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further. Next up, this AI is super useful. It's called TrajectoryCrafter, and this is an AI that can change the camera movements of an existing video. So you can input any video and get this AI to generate the same scene, but with different camera movements and positions. How insane is that? And here are some examples of the camera controls. You can get it to pan, left, right, up, down, or also orbit, left, right, up, down, or zoom in and out. So here are some examples. Let's say for the input video, we have this monkey playing chess. Well, we can plug it into TrajectoryCrafter and get the camera to zoom in and orbit, and here is what we get. Super cool tool. Here's another example of a grandma cooking something, and you can plug it into this AI to zoom in and orbit, and by the way, you can also specify the center point of the orbit, so instead of orbiting around the grandma, you can kind of orbit beyond the grandma to show the back of the kitchen like this. And notice how the back of the kitchen isn't even in the original video. So it kind of has to generate and make this up on the fly. Here's another example of this chameleon, which looks really cute by the way, but you can adjust the camera movement of this video like this. Here's another example where the original video is this Tokyo lady video by OpenAI's Sora. Well, we can get this AI to orbit around the woman like this. And then here's a corgi taking a selfie, and again, you can use this AI to change the camera movement into something like this. And for the most part, everything looks very consistent and accurate. Or here's an example of a really hot, juicy steak video, and again, notice how you can edit the camera movement of this video through this AI. And speaking of hot, juicy videos, I think this AI would be a game changer if it was applied to other types of video, if you catch my drift. Anyways, here's another cool example of this waterfall scene, and we can get it to orbit around the scene like this. And here are a few more examples. So this would be so useful for like product commercials or cooking tutorials, or basically anything where if you require multiple cameras to shoot a scene at different angles, well, you no longer need to do that. With this AI, you can just shoot everything with one camera and then post-process it afterwards to make it look like there are different scenes shot at multiple angles. Anyways, there are a ton of examples on this page, so you can check it out if you want afterwards. Another cool effect you can do with this is you can even freeze a scene and generate bullet time videos like this. How cool is that? Now, if you scroll up to the top, they even have a Hugging Face space for you to use online. However, because this does involve video generation, you can't run this on the free plan. You do need to pay for GPU credits on Hugging Face to run this online. Or if you have a powerful enough GPU, you can also download and run this locally on your computer. So at the top, they've also released a GitHub repo, and if you scroll down, this includes all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. However, note that this does require a CUDA GPU of at least 28 gigabytes, so even a 4090 with 24 gigabytes of VRAM will not be able to run this. Now, this has just been released this week, so hopefully the open source community can create a more quantized version which can be run on lower memory GPUs. Anyways, for now, I'll link to this page in the description below for you to read further. Next up, Alibaba unveils VACE. This is an extremely powerful all-in-one video editor and generator. It can do so many things at once. For example, you can generate a video of a boy with this prompt. A young boy rises from his chair and walks to the right side of the frame. But in addition, you can plug in this reference video of a moving rectangle, and the boy would move accordingly to this reference video. Or you can plug in an existing video of a dude on a horse, and then you would input this reference character, and it can replace the dude with this character. Or here's another really cool example that would be super useful for product commercials. You can plug in one or multiple reference images of a character or an object, such as this woman and then this handbag, and then you can prompt this video generator to create a video with these reference assets. Here's an even crazier example. So you can plug in one image of Mona Lisa. Note that this is a vertical image, so you can get this to outpaint the image first so it fills up a wide angle frame, and then get her to put on these sunglasses. Or here's another example of taking an existing video and replacing one of the characters with a reference image of this cat. Note how seamlessly it adds this reference character. Here's another cool example. You can take a pose video of someone moving and then add in a reference image, and it would generate a video of this reference character moving according to the pose video. This is such a flexible and powerful tool. And there's more you can do with it. So you can take one video and translate the motion and camera angle of that video to a new video, like this. Similarly, you can take this video of people dancing and generate a new video from that with some other characters having the same motion as the input video. Really cool. Or here's another really useful example. You can also take an existing video and outpaint it, or basically expand the edges of the video. So here's the initial video. After outpainting, here is what we get. How cool is that? So you can add an entire symphony to the background of this video. Now, if you scroll up to the top of the page, there is a Hugging Face link, and it does say the models are coming soon, so it looks like they are going to open source this, which is fantastic. And if you click on their GitHub repo, note that the nice thing is this is just a framework. It's not a video model itself, which means you can plug any video generator into this, including Alibaba's Wan, which is currently the best open source video model out there. Or we also have LTX, and I'm sure you can probably plug Hunyuan into this as well. Plus, the nice thing is they are going to release a Gradio interface, which is a nice visual interface so you don't have to work with code the whole time. And they're even going to release a Comfy UI workflow, which is awesome. Once this is out, I'll probably do a tutorial on it, so stay tuned for that. For now, I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further. In humanoid robot news, in the past few weeks, I've featured some demos of this robotics company Unitree, who have gotten their robots to dance or even do kung fu like this, which is pretty impressive. Well, this week we have a new contender. So this demo is from the robotics company EngineAI, which is lesser known compared to other brands, but they have a robot that can run like this. Look how freakishly fast it can run. Imagine if this was programmed to chase you down. By the way, running fast is not the only thing it can do. So just 3 weeks ago, they published another demo of this robot doing a front flip. This is the first humanoid robot to pull this off. We've seen other robots like Unitree and Boston Dynamics being able to do a backflip, but a front flip is even harder, so this is an incredibly impressive demo. Plus, it can also walk extremely realistically like this. Anyways, back to this new running demo, I haven't seen another humanoid robot being able to run this fast. So I think this might be the fastest running humanoid out there. Next up, NVIDIA releases this blazing fast image generator called Sana Sprint. And yes, this is completely free and open source. This image model can basically generate an image in just one step. If you're not familiar with the term step, when you're generating images with open source models like Stable Diffusion or Flux, you basically start with an image of latent noise that looks like this. And then at every step, it takes away some of that noise until eventually, after enough steps, you get the image that you prompted. By the way, in Comfy UI, this basically corresponds to the number of steps which you set in this K-sampler node over here. Anyways, for typical image generators, they require at least like 20 steps for you to get a decent looking image. But each step, of course, requires more time and more compute. The crazy thing about Sana Sprint is it can generate an image in just one step. So here's a demo of this in action. If you prompt it with 100 different prompts, note that it's creating all of these images within milliseconds. And so by the time it's finished generating 100 images, that only took 12 seconds. And all the images actually look pretty good. And they are high resolution, so it's 1024 by 1024. Now you could get Sana Sprint to generate an image in just one step, but you can also add more steps to the process to make the quality even better. So here's an example comparing some images that were generated with 2 steps versus images that were generated with 4 steps, and then images using the Sana base model. This is not the Sana Sprint model, and this one requires at least 20 steps. And note the time difference between these models. If you use the Sana base model, you can only generate around 2.8 images per second. Whereas for Sana Sprint 4 steps, you can generate 11 images per second. Or if you only use 2 steps, then you can generate 13 images per second. This is crazy fast. Here are some sample images from Sana Sprint. So even though you only use like 1 to 4 steps, this is extremely detailed and good quality. Here's another example where the prompt is an astronaut lying in the middle of white roses, and this looks very detailed. Here's a really juicy gourmet cheeseburger, and oh my gosh, just looking at this makes me so hungry. But notice how realistic and detailed this image looks. And then here is a young woman with blonde hair in a bright lit room with a plain background. This prompt is strangely detailed. It even specifies that she has to be upper middle class income, possibly between 50K and 100K per year. It even talks about her religious beliefs and political affiliations. I've never seen that in a prompt before. Let me know in the comments below. Just from this photo, does she look like she's upper middle class and making between 50K and 100K per year? Anyways, those are just some sample images of NVIDIA's Sana Sprint, and here's a comparison between other models like SDXL or Stable Diffusion 3.5 Turbo or Flux Schnell. So if you generate this prompt, Luffy from One Piece, Handsome Face Fantasy, using one step, notice the Stable Diffusion models look pretty awful. You just can't generate a decent looking image with just one step. You usually require at least 4 to 6 steps in order to get a good looking image. And then for Flux Schnell, it's not bad, but Flux is painfully slow, even for the Schnell model. This took 2.1 seconds. Whereas Sana Sprint only took 0.31 seconds, and look at the quality of this photo. It is indeed Luffy in fantasy style. And then here's another example. If the prompt is bright scene aerial view of an ancient city, and then if we run this with 2 steps, notice again the Stable Diffusion models just lack quality. Flux Schnell is not bad, but if you look at the timing, again, you kind of have to wait 7 times longer to get one image from Flux. And then if you look at Sana Sprint, look how beautiful this looks. And then if you prompt it with 3D digital art of an adorable ghost holding a heart-shaped pumpkin, and then if you run it with 4 steps, notice that the Stable Diffusion models start to look a bit better with more steps, but it's still not really following the prompt really well. Sana Sprint is the only one that was able to generate a heart-shaped pumpkin, and I would say this ghost looks the most adorable. And the good news is this will be open source. So if you click on this GitHub repo at the top, it does say Sana Sprint is coming out. The code is coming very soon. And then if you scroll to the bottom, this contains all the instructions on how to download and use Sana. Anyways, I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further. Thanks to AI Portrait for sponsoring this video. A good professional photo on your LinkedIn or business profile makes a huge difference. Now, you could try to take them yourself or get a friend to do so, but most people aren't great at taking professional photos. Or you could hire a professional photo shoot, but this costs over $200 on average, plus you need to schedule a session and spend hours awkwardly posing at a camera. And this brings us to AI Portrait. You can generate a portfolio of professional, high-quality photos in just minutes. Just upload one photo, choose your gender, and it would generate a portfolio of 50 professional headshots in various settings. And it generates this within minutes. So if you're looking for high-quality professional photos without the hassle of a physical photo shoot, AI Portrait is your best bet. Check it out via the link in the description below. Next up, this AI startup called Remade just open-sourced a ton of VFX which you can add to videos. Now, you might have heard of Pika effects by Pika Labs, and this is basically a wide range of effects you can apply to an uploaded image, and it would generate a video of that effect. For example, you can upload this image and squish it into Play-Doh like this. Or you can upload any object and turn it into cake like this. Or you can also inflate an object like this. And of course, you can also blow anything up like this. Those are just a few examples. They have a lot more effects that you can choose from. But note that Pika is closed source. This is a commercial video generator which is paid and you can't run it locally or fine-tune it. Well, this week, Remade has pretty much reproduced these effects in the form of LoRa's, which you can use with the free and open source video generator called Wan. If you haven't heard of Wan, it's currently the best open source video generator out there. You can download and run this locally for free. In fact, I already did a full installation tutorial on it, so see this video if you're interested. Anyways, back to these open source video effects. The collection currently includes these options. So you can squish an object into Play-Doh like this, or here's another example where you can squish this tank into Play-Doh, or there's another LoRa where you can rotate an object like this. Or here's another cool one. You can inflate an object into a balloon. So here's an example of that in action. Or you can cakeify anything. So here's what that would look like. Very cool. Plus, you can also deflate an object or crush an object. You can turn anyone into a bride or turn anyone into a puppy, a baby, etc., etc. There's a long list of VFX which you can use. And you can basically plug any of these into your Wan workflow to generate videos with these effects. Note, however, that these LoRa's only work for the Wan 480p model, which is pretty low quality. If you want higher resolution generations, then Pika effects is still your best option. Anyways, if you're interested, I'll link to this Hugging Face collection in the description below where you can download and try each of these VFX in your Wan workflow. Next up, this super realistic real-time AI voice called Sesame finally open-sourced their models this week. Sesame was released around 1 to 2 weeks ago, and this is an insanely natural-sounding AI voice which you can talk to in real time. Here's a quick demo on how realistic this can sound. Let's try this. You're laughing uncontrollably at something, and you're trying to stop it, but you can't. You just keep laughing because it's too funny.
I shouldn't. Oh my goodness. I can't. It's just, I need a ha. Stop laughing. It's too much. I can't breathe. Oh man. I think I'm gonna.
In fact, I already did a full video demoing its capabilities, and I even got 2 of these voices to talk to each other, so see this video if you haven't already. Anyways, in their official release blog, it says they have trained 3 different models. There's a tiny one with 1 billion parameters, a small one with 3 billion, and a medium one with 8 billion parameters. And of course, the more parameters you have, the better quality the model is, but it does take more compute to run. And they did say they are going to open source these models. So as promised, this week, they released one of their models on GitHub and Hugging Face, and it appears this is the 1 billion parameter version. So this is the smallest model. The quality is not as good as the voice which you can use on their platform. But nevertheless, this is completely open source and free for you to download and use locally on your computer. So this GitHub repo contains all the instructions you need on how to download and use this. So let me know in the comments below if you want me to do an installation tutorial on this, but note that this is the smallest model, so it might not be worth your time yet. Hopefully they will release the other larger variants, which would sound a lot more realistic and better quality. Anyways, for now, I will link to this GitHub repo in the description below for you to check out further. Next up, this AI is super useful. I don't think it has a proper name, but the article title is called Long Context Tuning for Video Generation. And here's what it does. It generates really long videos by combining multiple shots into a coherent story. So here's an example. First, if you prompt it with flying view of the forest, this is your first clip. And then for the next clip, if you prompt it with low angle view, note that it generates a new scene, but it keeps the style and everything consistent. And then next, if you get it to generate the boy and the girl get lost in the forest, it generates a boy and the girl in this forest. And then for the next scene, if you prompt it with the girl comes out of the forest, this is what you get. And then the boy steps towards the camera. Notice it keeps the appearance of the boy and the girl consistent across all these videos. And then here's a point of view of the mysterious forest. And then here the boy and girl meet and discuss. Again, notice the appearance of both the boy and the girl are very consistent. And then here's a close-up of the boy's serious expression. Super detailed and realistic. And then here's a close-up of the girl's worrying face. And then here the camera follows them, continuing the journey. And so you get the point. This is basically a video editor that can generate multiple clips that look very consistent and then combine them together into one long video. And it's really good at keeping character consistency, which of course is a super important feature when you're generating long videos. So with this tool, you can create some pretty cool stuff like nature documentaries. So for the first prompt, we have a wide shot of a beautiful coral reef. Then for the next clip, we have electric blue and yellow fish. And then for the next clip, we have a close-up of a loggerhead sea turtle, and so on and so forth. So you can easily just prompt this AI to create an entire nature documentary like this. Or here's another example. So the first prompt is an establishing shot of the cafe. This seems like a scene from a rom-com or something. And then here a woman is reading beside the window. And then here's a close-up of the coffee and the book. Notice how everything is very consistent compared with the previous scene. And then here a man enters the cafe, and so on and so forth. Now, instead of hard cutting from scene to scene, there's even more you can do with this. So you can plug in an existing video and then extend that video seamlessly. So here's an example. If this original video is an SUV driving in the forest, and then you prompt it with drives along a coastal highway, notice that it kind of seamlessly transforms the video into a coastal highway. This is not a hard cut. Next, if you prompt it with drives into a beautiful village, that is indeed what happens. And then next, if you prompt it with drives across a golden field, this is what you get, and so on and so forth. So a really useful tool. Notice that these transitions are very seamless, and these are not hard cuts from scene to scene. And here's the crazy part. They mentioned that they did not explicitly train this model to take in separate reference images of characters and environments, but somehow this model is able to combine the two and generate a video from that. So as you can see in this example, you can also plug in a photo of Geoffrey Hinton and then plug in this photo of a museum and generate a video from that. And of course, you can combine multiple features together. So let's say you generate this first scene of Jeffrey in a museum. Well, for the next scene, you can add another reference image of Jan LeCun and get him to talk to Jeffrey like this. How cool is that? And here's another super useful thing you can do with this. So let's say you have two scenes, but they're not really connected together. It doesn't really flow properly. Well, you can use this AI to generate a scene in the middle to fill in this gap. This is also called scene interpolation. Now, of course, there can be many possibilities of what this middle scene could be, so here are two of its suggestions. And you can also further guide the video generation by adding a prompt. So in this first example, the guy is listening to music, and then in the second example, the guy is making a phone call. And you can see it does portray the characters very accurately based on the original clips. Now, if you scroll up to the top of the page, unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's any GitHub repo with code, but I really hope they will eventually open source this. I think this tool would be so useful and definitely a game changer for creating longer, consistent videos. Anyways, for now, I'll link to this page in the description below for you to check out more examples. Next up, Google releases Gemma 3 this week. This is a pretty insane model. They call it the most capable model you can run on a single GPU or TPU. Now, there are actually 4 variants of Gemma 3, which have various sizes. So the smallest one is 1 billion parameters, and the largest one is 27 billion parameters. These smaller models could maybe even run on consumer devices like smartphones. So here's what makes Gemma 3 so good. First of all, this can support over 140 languages, and this includes better performance for languages like Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. If you remember, last week I featured this new AI model called Babel by Alibaba, and they claim that this model serves over 90% of global speakers. However, Babel only covers the top 25 most spoken languages, whereas here it covers 140 languages, so this is way more extensive. And note that Gemma 3 also has visual reasoning capabilities, so you can get it to analyze images and videos, in addition to text. Note that this vision capability is not available for the smallest model of 1 billion parameters. And just to show you how good this is, here's the ELO score, or basically the quality score, from this chatbot arena, which I'll show you in a second. Now, this is quite a blurry photo, but note that Gemma 3 27B even beats DeepSeek V3, which has 671 billion parameters. I mean, this is like 30 times bigger. Plus, it beats Llama 3 405B, which is also way bigger. And it also beats OpenAI's O3 Mini. We don't know how big this is, but this is one of their best models out there. Plus, this is a thinking model. So it's crazy that a non-thinking model like Gemma 3, which doesn't take time to think through its response before answering, this actually beats O3 Mini, which should, in theory, give higher quality responses. So Gemma 3 only lost to DeepSeek R1, which is a thinking model, but it's not really comparing apples to apples. So this is extremely impressive. And then here in the bottom, it shows roughly how many GPUs are required to run these models. And note that Gemma 3 only requires like one H100 GPU to run this. And if you look at this LM Arena leaderboard where people can blind test different models, note that Gemma 3 is here. It even beats OpenAI's O3 Mini High and Claude 3.7 Sonnet, which is all the way down here. The awesome thing is, Gemma 3 is already open source, so you can go to Hugging Face and download these models to run locally on your computer. Plus, you can also try this out in AI Studio right now. So in aistudio.google.com, which I'll link to in the description below, this is a free interface for you to try out all of Google's AI models. So in this model drop down here, note that if you scroll all the way down, you can select Gemma 3 27B over here. So that's what we're going to do. And then let's prompt it with something like this. So I'm going to input a random sentence and then get it to translate this to Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. Let's press run and see if it can pull it off. And here's what it outputs. This is super thorough. So for Chinese, it actually gives us a few options. So here is option 1, which is more literal and common. So here's the full translation. It even gives me an explanation for what all these characters mean. And then for option 2, this is more poetic, and it also gives me an explanation for all of these. And then same thing with Japanese, it gives me option 1, which is more literal, and then option 2, which is more natural and flowing like this. And then same thing with Korean, it gives me several options, so you get the point. This is super thorough and it's really good for multilingual tasks. Anyways, I'll link to this main release page plus Google's AI Studio in the description below for you to check it out further. Speaking of Google, they've also released a new version of Gemini 2.0 Flash this week, which includes the ability to generate and edit images. And you can use it right now for free in Google's AI Studio. So I'll link to this page in the description below, but for this model dropdown, you just need to select Gemini 2.0 Flash Image Generation. Note that this is a new name change that they've added, so make sure you select this one. And then for the output format, make sure you select images and text. And that's pretty much it. You can prompt this AI to generate any image you want or edit any existing image. Now, I already did a full tutorial and review on this, so I'm not going to repeat too much here. Definitely check out this video to learn more about other cool things you can do with this new Gemini model and AI Studio. Alright, next up, this AI is pretty crazy. It's called Meshpad, and this lets you create and edit 3D models using simple sketches. You basically just sketch something out and Meshpad will turn it into a 3D model. You can also edit the model further by drawing or erasing parts of the sketch. So in this example, the user first draws the legs of the chair like this, and it generates this 3D model. And then you can edit it further by adding more of the chair like this. Or you can even get rid of the legs and then turn it into a swivel chair like this. At each step, the AI will magically apply your sketch or edit to the 3D model. And here are more examples of this in action. So here the user is sketching a variety of objects, and in the end, the AI is able to transform these sketches into 3D models, as you can see here. And if you compare this with existing methods of sketch to 3D model generators, you can see that this new Meshpad performs better in most cases. So here's another example where the sketch is a plane. And then at the bottom of the page, there are more examples you can play with. So here's a timeline of all the changes. So let's say the user starts with this. You can drag this slider and see what additions or deletions the user has added throughout time. So in the end, we get something like this. Or here's another example. So at the start, he drew something like this, and then here's what happens at every step, and eventually we get something like this. Very interesting. Anyways, if you scroll up to the top of the page, it does say the code is coming soon, so hopefully they are going to open source this. For now, I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further. And that sums up all the highlights in AI this week. Let me know in the comments what you think of all of this. Which piece of news was your favorite, and which tool are you most looking forward to trying out? As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.